Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Once Human video. Today we are updating the WILDFIRE and Bingo build. And this is going to be the final one, the best one for PvE, for PvP. The way you get these weapons, you go to Wish Machine, make a direct purchase from Blueprint Shop, Pistol Blueprint, WILDFIRE right there, Sniper Blueprint, AWS Bullseye BP, or Bingo. It looks different on the shop here, but once you buy it, it's going to be called Bingo once you craft it. You will also need to buy yourself Seasoned Hunter leather boots, which are these. They cost 8,000 and this is the description for it. However, once you craft them and go in inventory, they're called Old Huntsman boots. I don't know why, it's just, that's how it is. Just read the description, and if the description matches, these are the boots you're looking for. Now, if you're going to be investing in PvE, you will need Renegade parts, 3 of them. And for PvP, you will need 4 Savior parts, which is going to cost 12,000 Starchrome. And for Renegade, it's going to cost 9,000 Starchrome. We're going to get into the basics of how WILDFIRE and Bingo works. First, I'll read the passives really quickly. 60% chance to trigger bullseye when hitting a target. If you right-click on the gun, go to details and click X on keyword, it highlights targets for you and makes you deal 8% more damage for 12 seconds. That's all the bullseye means. There's also a 80% chance to spread bullseye to 1 enemies within a 15-meter area. And if there's no one in these 15 meters, you will get 25% weapon damage. As long as you keep shooting, and if there's no one around the area, you'll get 25 weapon damage. Lastly, when hitting a weak spot of marked enemies, you will gain attack plus 3% for 10 seconds, up to 3 stacks. Now, what is attack really quickly? Your actual damage is over here. I will give you guys a quick formula of how this damage is calculated. If you take a look at my weapon, I have a calibration of minus 15% attack. Now, what that means is that I will lose some damage off my base gun damage. This is your final calculated damage, but if you hover your mouse on your gun, it says 1157. So if we quickly go to the calculator, this is the formula for it. You have to take your weapon base damage, which is found when you hover your mouse on the gun. However, we have to unequip the ammo. You have to have copper ammo, because if I put tungsten ammo, you can see our damage increases, and now this right here also increases. But do note, you have to crouch when you're checking this, because the damage, this is the actual damage now. So 1157 with tungsten, and if I changed it, it will go back to 984. And all we do using this formula is we put 1157 here, and then attack we have minus 15 on the gun. If you're deducting from the number, you have to start from 1. If you're adding a number, you have to then do this. So this would be plus 15 attack, and this would be minus 15 attack over here. And the 100 is because we're turning it into percentage. And basically, last thing we need to do now is copy this number again, weapon base damage, put this here. Lastly, the gun's passive gives us attack 9% stacked fully. So all I have to do is just shoot the target. And notice how above my health bar, there's 3 number. If I keep shooting, it refreshes. That's our passive. Now you can see our damage is 1088. So since the passive said it's increased by 3% up to 3 stacks, that means we have to put 9%. So we would have to put 9 here. And actually here we would have to put 85. Now if we take all of this, copy this, paste it into the calculator, we're going to get the exact number that we see on the screen here. 1087.58, and that rounds to 1088. If you want to add more stuff, you just copy this line here with the plus included, boom, paste it. And here you just have to put in, instead of the 915, because our most wanted mod is also giving us 15 attack. So if we had this on, now if I shoot a target, and you can see that on the left, near my health bar, there's a 3 number as well. And if we hover your mouse on it, it's attack plus 5% for 8 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. Let me just do this once again. So I stack it up. And now you can see we have 1262 damage instead of 1088. So let's copy this line. And now if I paste this into the calculator, you can see we get 1261. And that damage matches exactly as this one, 1262. However, 1 point is higher. If there's decimals, any decimals, 0, 1, let's say your damage is 255, and then there's decimals like 0.5. This will get rounded up to 256 If there's no decimals, then it will stay as it is. But if there's any decimal, it will just get rounded up by 1 point. That's why we have 1 point higher here. That's how attack works. Now let's explain how bingo works. We're just getting started. 70% chance to trigger the bullseye on a weak spot hit, which means if you don't hit the weak spot, you will never trigger bullseye. After switching to this weapon, the first hit will trigger the bullseye. So how does this work? As soon as you swap from any weapon to the sniper, your first shot you hit will trigger bullseye. So boom, we triggered bullseye and the target's marked. So if I shot the target, we will deal more damage, or because it's applied vulnerability. The next thing is grants weak spot damage 15% on hit for 10 seconds and it stacks 3 times. That's 45% total weak spot damage that we get for just hitting the target 3 times like that. And then lastly, we have after defeating an enemy with a weak spot hit, we gain an attack 15% for 20 seconds. So again, if you wanted to calculate that, here's the formula for it. But yeah, basically, that's all for the passives and how these guns work. Now we have the old Huntsman boots, and what they do is after you mark an enemy, the next one bullet you will hit, which is marks enemy, it will be 100% as a weak spot hit, and it will do 30% more to the weak spot damage. So take a look at this. I swap my gun, shoot the target. Now the next bullet will be a weak spot hit. Take a look at this. Boom. Weak spot hit right there. That's what these boots do. That's literally it. Now there's another boot which is called early boots. What they do is when hitting and marked enemies, damage plus 30%. All it does is it just gives you 30% more damage when you hit a marked enemy. Now, hear me out. Sometimes this in PvE is better than the gold Huntsman boots. However, if you're hitting a target that doesn't have a weak spot to hit, the boots, golden boots, will be better. So if you're fighting a boss that has an easy weak spot at any time to hit, use the earthly boots. For PvP, if you're a godly aimer and you can aim so good and hit headshots every time, the earthly boots are better for you. However, if you hit body shots, the golden boots are better. As for how damage works on this gun, it's pretty simple. We have our base damage here, we have weapon damage bonus, and we have weak spot damage bonus. If you shoot the dummy, then you have to count the common enemies as well, because the dummy is considered a normal enemy. And when you have normal enemy damage bonus right here, you can press C and see all your buffs. It's counted towards the dummy. So if you had 0, you'll do less damage. If you have 8% here, you'll deal way more damage to the dummy, which makes the damage unreal. If you're testing your damage on the dummy, just do know that the damage is fake on the dummy. You would have to actually test it on a real player. Now let's say you want to know how much damage your bingo does. Well, all you do is take this number here, 3129. That's our base damage, which goes in one slot. Then we have weapon damage bonus, 36.2. So we put that in a new multiplier, and that's the formula for this damage. That's your first shot you're going to do to the dummy. But however, we have to hit 80% because we have 8% here. Now if I shot in the dummy, we will do 4,603 damage. And of course, if you want to calculate weak spot, then all you need to do is do 161.3, and that's going to be your damage to the dummy in the head. First shot. Boom. We're going to get to the mods, and I'm going to explain in depth everything about every single modification and why you should use it and why you shouldn't use it. We're using a rapid shot style calibration on the WILDFIRE, which gives us fire rate 25%, magazine capacity 40%, and attack minus 15%. The fire rate compensates for the damage loss, so you're going to shoot faster, but you lose damage. But still, I prefer fire rate way more over than precision style, which gives you more damage and less fire rate. And then we obviously want to have 2 weak spots on the gun calibration. Now for the mod, you want to use weak spot damage and weapon damage as a substats, and then third one must be weapon damage reduced, and fourth one must be max HP. Of course, you can get unlucky and get a PvE mod, which I got here. You can see it's damage against gray ones. It ruined the whole mod where I could have gotten weapon damage bonus and stuff. You will need 4 parts of Savior, 1, 2, 3, 4 here. The Savior top is 5 stars. Savior helmet is 2 stars, mask is 2, gloves is 3, boots is 5, and heavy duty pants is 2. Obviously you want to have heavy duty pants 5, but I messed my formula up, so oopsie daisy. But I'm going to quickly show you the mods I'm using for PvP. Hunter's perk as well, precision for bingo. For helmet we have momentum up with weak spot, weapon damage, and weapon damage reduced. The most important ones, momentum up. Mask is most wanted precision, again weapon damage reduced, weapon damage, weak spot damage. On gloves, we want munitions amplifier, weak spot damage, weapon damage, max HP, or weapon damage reduce. Shoes is covered advanced, weak spot damage, weapon damage reduce. On the top, we have resist advantage, weak spot damage, weapon damage, max HP. On the pants, we have 3 strikes, weak spot damage, head damage reduction, weapon damage. The damage bonuses against normal enemies, grade 1s, elite enemies doesn't work in PvP, so they're completely useless, but they're godly for PvE. Alright, now we're gonna jump into our sheets. Now, why we are using Hunter's Perk in PvP, which is this for your gun, is because when you mark an enemy, that enemy will deal 20% less damage to you. Now, it might sound like it's nothing, but trust me, it does help a little bit, and it makes you survive longer in fights. The most important part in PvP is obviously you surviving and killing more people, rather than you dealing more damage but dying fast. That's for the WILDFIRE gun. Now, instead of momentum up, you could be using this precise strike. Hitting weak spots grants 12% weak spot damage for 3 seconds, up to 3 stacks. You could be using this, but it's more better to use momentum. And the reason why we're using momentum up is because it gives you fire rate for the first 50% bullets. So you're going to be shooting fast. You're going to get all your procs in, and then the 50% last bullets, you're going to be dealing 25% more damage, weapon damage. And it said 30%. That's a bug, by the way, and you can find that out yourself if you tested it. I'm not going to show it in this video because I'm too lazy, but it's 25%, not 30%. It's a translation error, but that's a lot of damage increase, and weapon damage is more important than weak spot damage because your base damage is also going to be higher than just your weak spot. So that's why we're using momentum up for the helmet. It's the best in slot mod. The mask, you want to have most wanted, and if you do run a crit build, then you don't want to use most wanted, but I realized that running crit build for Bingo and WILDFIRE doesn't work out because your WILDFIRE will do decent amount of damage, but your Bingo will not. It still works though, you could still use the crit build, but 7 precision is just way more damage, I guess. Because with crit, you need to rely more on getting those crits in. It's just you're rolling the dice and gambling. And the reason why we're using Most Wanted, by the way, is because once you get your stacks, which is once you mark an enemy, you'll gain 5% attack, which means you'll do more damage to the enemy. That's it. You just do more damage. That's the reason why we're using this mod. If you use the targeted strike, it's basically just for a crit build, and we're not using crit at all, so you don't need this. It gives you crit rate 10% and crit damage 25%. And since we don't have any crit damage, there's no point of using this mod. Then we're using Munitions Amplifier for gloves. Oh boy, why we're using this? So if you take a look, Munitions Amplifier, all we get for using this is 15% weapon damage. That's it, that's all we get. And you want to have 9% weak spot damage as a substat on it. It has to be precision, and you want to have 6% weapon damage bonus on it. That's the best in slot mod you could get. Obviously, there's another mod that you can put, which is the weak spot damage boost. Now, your damage in weak spots will be higher with weak spot damage boost. However, your base damage, which is my damage, will be lower with weak spot damage boost. And since we're using WILDFIRE and Bingo, mostly you're not going to be hitting weak spots all the time. You're mostly going to be 70%, 60% going to be hitting wide damage. That's why I prefer to use Munitions Amplifier. You do know that weapon damage will increase your weak spot damage as well, while weak spot damage doesn't really increase your base damage. So that's the only reason why we're using weapon damage. As well as in some cases, weapon damage is better than weak spot because when you have a low damage multiplier of weapon damage and your weak spot is very high, sometimes it's even actually better to just go with weapon damage. And I'm going to actually show it to you right now. Now, if you take a look, this is weak spot damage and this is weapon damage. This is our Munitions Amplifier. And this right here is our weak spot damage boost. So you can see that this does more damage to the head by, what, 230 damage or something? And this one does less. But if we took off the weak spot, obviously it's going to do more because we have more weapon damage bonus. However, take a look at this. If we had 300 weak spot damage here, and here we had 325, look at how much more damage we're doing. We have 23,400 damage to the head here. And over here we have 22,950. We're basically doing a 450 damage less with weak spot damage boost mod over here. And this is the Munitions Amplifier. Basically, the more weak spot you have, and if your multipliers are not like equal, let's say you had 150 weapon damage bonus and you had 150 weak spot, well then obviously, as you can see now, the weak spot one is going to be better because you have equal multipliers. But that's just basically math, dude. If you had 30% weapon damage and so much weak spot, then that Munitions Amplifier would help you so much. I yapped for a long time, sorry about that, but I just wanted to explain why we're using munitions amplifier. We're using resist advantage because, boy oh boy, what resist advantage does is when you're out of combat, you gain 1 stack of damage reduction, 10% every 10 seconds, and effect can stack up to 5 times, and you lose 1 stack when you get hit. It stacks up to 50% damage reduction, that's all it is. First 5 bullets you receive either from the sniper or from the pistol, you're just gonna counter a lot of damage and negate a lot of damage. You're just gonna survive longer and have a time to react to the opponent. You could replace this with, like, for example, healing fortification, which is when using a healing shot, damage reduction 40% for 2 seconds. That's good for close range if you play WILDFIRE mainly and don't really use bingo that much, but I still prefer resist advantage. And then there's quick comeback that gives you, when using a healing shot, movement speed 20% for 2 seconds and refills the mag from the inventory up to 100%. So it's up to you if you want to play any of these 3 mods. I just choose resist advantage. Then we're using covered advance, and all it does is taking no damage within 4 seconds, it will grant you 20% weapon damage. That's all we care for. Weapon damage for 20% for 30 seconds. Now, once you get shot at, you still keep the buff until 30 seconds pass by. Once it does pass, you just have to wait 4 seconds again, not receive damage, and you'll get the buff again. That's why we're using covered advance and not slow and steady. Slow and steady is only good when you are camping, not moving, not getting shot at, and you're constantly always full HP. Then yes, slow and steady will always be there. You will always have that 20% damage. Both is the same, except the conditions are different. And 3 strikes we're using, you could be using Unstoppable, which is this right here. Unstoppable, weak spot damage plus 10% when a bullet hits a target more than 20 meters away, and for every additional 1 meters away from the target, weak spot damage 1% up to 20%. All you get from this mod is 30% more weak spot damage if you're far away. That's it. That's all you get. Now, 20 meters in this game is basically this amount. So if you shoot a target here, you will deal 30% weak spot damage to that target. Oh, sorry, it's 40%, not 30%. My bad. That should be there. Fixed it. That's basically if you shoot this range. However, with WILDFIRE, normally you always shoot like more like 8 meters, 10 meters close. You have just close range fights, basically, you know. Yeah, we're not using this Unstoppable mod because 3 strikes is better for me. And if you take a look, what 3 strikes does is, for the first 3 hits after reloading, you will do weak spot damage 50%. This is good for bingo. You could be 1 meter close, you could be 10 meters close, you will always have the first 3 shots, you will deal weak spot damage 50%. Now, if you don't like 3 strikes, you can for sure use Unstoppable. Go ahead if you don't like 3 strikes. If you decide to go with Unstoppable, then all you would need to focus on for the substats is 9% weak spot damage and 6% weapon damage, and the rest just doesn't matter. Weapon damage reduce, max HP, you know, that's all it is to it. For PvP, the armor we must use is Savior, 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 Heavy Duty, and Old Huntsman shoes. You can see the stars in here that we are using. 2 stars helmet, 2 stars mask, 3 stars gloves, and top is 5 star. Heavy Duty should be 5, but I have 2. And then Huntsman boots 5 stars. The gun passive gives you 9% attack, so it's included in here. If you keep going down, the gun has vulnerability passive, so we include the vulnerability here. And if you keep going down, the gun normally has 60% weak spot damage, so it's included over here as well. The gun's passive for WILDFIRE gives you 25% weapon damage bonus, so that's also included here in the weapon damage bonus list. Then we have bingo buffs here, and what this means is that basically when you shoot a target 3 times, you just gain 45% weak spot damage for amount of time. That's why we have 45 here in the weak spot damage. Obviously, if you didn't have that, our weak spot damage total would be 282, but since we have it, it would be 327. And this is the calibration for weak spot damage, first slot and second slot. That's the maximum, by the way, and in total that is 24%. Min-max mods here, you want to have 9 weak spot damage on every single of your mod. If we removed all of these, our weak spot would be 264, and with all the weak spot damage boosts, we would have 327. And these are the cradle buffs here. This is cradle buff steady hand, 20% weak spot damage. If we go in game and check it out, the steady hand, what it does is, as long as the target is marked, you will always deal 20% more damage to the marked target. It says, while in Fortress Warfare or Fast Gunner status, you gain weak spot damage 40%. That's one line, but the second line is weak spot damage to the bullseye 20%. Now, of course, there's a funny thing you can do is, take a look at this. We are going to take a Fast Gunner LMG, which is this, put it on. I'm also going to put on a Fast Gunner mod that makes my stacks last longer. Fast Gunner duration 4 seconds when Fast Gunner is active. That's all we need. Now when I shoot this gun, you can see above my health bar, I have fast gunner status. Now, take a look at my weak spot damage. We have 171, and it drops. So if I shot, we trigger fast gunner, swap my weapon, weak spot damage increases because we are in Fortress Warfare, and you basically get 60% weak spot damage from this steady hand cradle perk. However, if you don't use the fast gunner, then all you get is 20% weak spot damage. Next up, the cradle perk we have here is 35% weak spot damage here, and that is basically the bounty hunter. When you kill a mob and fully kill them, or you fully kill a player, you will get weapon damage 25% and weak spot damage 35%. All the cradle is listed in this vertical bar here. Then we have weapon damage bonus. This comes from the gun cradle, which is this. This gives you damage 20%. It gives you actually status damage 20% and weapon damage bonus 20%. So if you took these off, then you lose that damage. So obviously you want to have these if you're using sniper and pistol. Mods are 6 per substat. Each mod has 6 weapon damage bonus. As you already saw in my mods, I showed you my mods, but you want to have 6 max. And then momentum up gives you 25% weapon damage bonus as well. As you can see this mod here. I'm going to go naked, and just to show you guys how it works, I'm going to equip a different gun, and I'm just going to equip a helmet, and I'm going to put in a momentum up mod. So now if we check our damage, weapon damage is 0%. If I shoot my jaws, you can see that weapon damage bonus is now 25, while the mod says it's 30. So if you're confused why it says 25 instead of 30, that's why, because it's bugged. Munitions amplifier gives us 50% weapon damage bonus, so we include that. And what these yellow ones mean is that they're conditional, so they're like not always there. And the purple damage just means that it's always there, so it's just fixed. That's why I marked purple. And Savior gives you 10% weapon damage as well when you're above 70% HP. Now, with all of this damage that we have here, everything is calculated. We go scroll to the right side, and this is all the damage to a player that you deal. WILDFIRE damage only, best in slot mods, strictly for PvP, and it's only one shot, by the way. Like the first shot you do. No food buffs, only mod stacking and cradle stacking. And then it says here the damage per shot is to a player. It's not to a dummy. It's default 10% damage reduction applied, torso damage reduction applied, and 50% damage reduction from resist advantage mod applied as well. And if you are wondering how the damage I calculated all of this, I have a video on completely explaining every single stat and how to calculate it, how the formulas work, and so on and forth. So here you can see bullet damage with damage reduction. This is how much damage you will do the Hunter's perk apply to them if they're marked and you have the mod. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. With level 5 Chef Azars, you can get 27.6 damage reduction from the sandwich. 50% damage reduced comes from resist advantage. 10% torso reduced from the weight. And the hidden damage reduced comes from every player has a hidden damage reduction 10% value. Not sure why. It's just to balance things, I guess, but that's just how it is. Everyone has a hidden damage reduction 10%. Then we have weak spot damage. This is unbuffed and no cradle stacking. Weak spot damage 147. Now this is with 20% comes from the cradle, 50% comes from our 3 strikes, 35% comes from cradle, 30% comes from the old huntsman boots when you proc, and 45% comes from the bingo 3 stacking. And if you scroll to the right more, this is our weapon damage without cradle stacks, so you get the point. Now, if we go to the very left, the first thing that you will see no buffs. So this is the first shot to the player. We will deal 484 damage with WILDFIRE. Take a look at this. We are on WILDFIRE sheet right now. If you click bingo, then you're gonna be on the bingo sheet. So don't get confused why the damage is low. Anyways, WILDFIRE damage will be very low to a player that is fully stacked with damage reduction. With all of these here, you can see what it has applied, so that's what the damage will be to the body. 484 white damage. And to the head, we will deal 1,196. Now, of course, if you get Savior weapon damage bonus, the damage will keep increasing here. If we get covered advance proc from our mod, we will deal even more damage. If we get reload cradle, we'll deal even more damage. All of these damages are here shown and calculated. We just add more and more buffs as we go. And you can see that players are very tanky. You will deal with all of these buffs applied right here that you can see. Vulnerability, bingo, stacks, all of here. Your max damage with all of these mods will be 1,125 as white damage and 4,800 in the head. Now this is with WILDFIRE, and again, all damage reductions applied. If you scroll down now, you can find how much damage you do without the high damage reductions, but still with resist advantage. You can see 829, 2049 here as a weak spot. Scroll more to the right. This is going to be your max damage here with less damage reductions. And if we scroll down even more, you will see how much damage you deal with a player that has no damage reduction, just torso damage reduction. Your first shot will deal 1,659 white and then 4,552 in the head. If you scroll to the right, this is how much your WILDFIRE will do fully stacked with everything basically. 3,854 in the body as white damage and 18,284 as a weak spot damage. That's crazy, bro. But do note, to get all of these buffs, it's almost nearly impossible in PvP unless you're going crazy. There's a lot of people that you're killing. Then yeah, all of these buffs are going to stack up. And the more buffs you stack up, obviously you'll deal more damage. That's why these are all included here. But yeah, these are the calculated damages we have. Mostly the dummies damage is just always inflated, so I just don't include it. This is for the WILDFIRE that you just saw. Now if we go to PvP Bingo, which you can go clicking on the bottom, everything is the same here. You will see that a little bit, we get a less weapon damage bonus here. We have 182 here instead of, on the WILDFIRE we had 207. And the reason for that is because the WILDFIRE gives us 25% weapon damage bonus from the passive. That's why Bingo has less weapon damage bonus. You can see that the Bingo has a calibration of bolt pulling speed. You will gain reload speed and you will gain bolt pulling speed and you will lose attack minus 10%. So that's why it's 10 here. And Bingo has a gun passive of 15 attack gain when you kill a target. That's why it's 15 here. And Most Wanted gives us 15 when fully stacked. That's it. That's everything's the same here. You want weak spot damage 9 and weapon damage 6% on the substats. If you scroll to the right, you can see how much damage you'll deal again with Bingo to a player with fully maxed damage reduction. And basically 12,000 if you're fully buffed with cradle stacks and all. That's still high. You can still 3-tap or 4-tap people even if they have high damage reduction. So, you know, man, it's crazy. Bingo is broken. And here on the very bottom, as you scroll down, you can see less damage reduction, only 10% torso damage reduce. Bingo will deal 4,486 in the body, and it will deal 11,000 damage as a weak spot hit. It's literally just first shot, bro, with no damage reduction. And if you scroll to the very right, you will deal 42,000 damage in the weak spot and 8,000 in the body. Yeah, man, this is completely balanced, bro. Completely balanced gun. But I mean, it's a sniper, hey, so, you know, people are supposed to die fast. But hey, it's a MMO RPG game. I think maybe snipers should deal, like, you know, a little bit less damage. We're not playing like CSGO or something, you know. We're playing an MMO RPG. That's everything about PvP sheet right here. Now, if you go to PvE WILDFIRE, things are going to be a little bit different over here. We are using Renegade Armor as a helmet. We're using Scout Mask. We're using Renegade Gloves, Scout Top, Renegade Bottom, and Old Huntsman Shoes. Now, the reason why we're using Scout instead of Agent, remember what we talked about, how weapon damage is more important than weak spot damage? The 8% is better, way better than 10% weak spot. That's why we're using Scout, and you will deal more damage as base damage. In the head, you'll also deal more damage because of the 8% weapon damage bonus. So that's why we prefer to use Scout instead of Agent. Renegade is used because we can stack the buffs. You will gain 10% weak spot damage, you will gain reload speed, and you will gain 40% weak spot damage if you stack it up 10 times. Which is good for bossing, which is good for killing tanky enemies, you know, that take a long time to kill. You'll just kill them faster with Renegade. You just need 3 parts, you do not need 4 parts at all. We're using Vulnerability Amplifier, and what it does is gives you 8% more vulnerability. That's why we need to use Vulnerability Amplifier for PvE. Obviously for PvP, you don't want to use Vulnerability Amplifier. Same mods goes for PvE, Momentum Up, Most Wanted, Munitions Amplifier, Resist Advantage, Covered Advance, and 3 Strikes. The only thing that is different in PvE, if we scroll down, you can see there's a damage to enemy bonus. If you go back to PvP, there's no damage to enemy bonus. That is because only in PvE, these are insanely good. You can get 6 grade 1's damage per mod, which is why we have 7 over here, and total you will get 42% here. This is the damage of Bingo with 42%. Grade 1's, 23,000. And this is the damage without grade 1's. Now if you scroll to the very right, look at this damage. 169k damage with 42% grade 1's damage. And this one right here, if we scroll down, it's only 120k damage in the head with Bingo, with no grade 1's damage. So grade 1's damage impacts your damage so much So does normal enemies, so does elite enemies. And if you're wondering what mod you should use, let's say you have a 9% weak spot damage and 6% weapon damage, but the other mod you have is 6% weapon damage and 6% grade 1's damage, then that grade 1's mod would be better than the other one. And the reason for that is just because of the damage bonus. Now this is with a food buff on the very right side. You can see we use that hot dog, 27.6% if you have level 5 Chef Azars. If you don't have anything, you'll just get 20% instead. But what this buff does is it's actually the best. It's better than crumbly bread. It's better than deviated sausage. And I'm gonna show you right now. Bone in deviated sausage right here, right? What it does is increases your damage against bosses by 15%. So that sausage you use for bossing will give you 15% damage to the grade ones. It will just add it up. I'm gonna craft it and show it to you. I'm gonna go naked completely. And if I open my stats, look, I have no damage against boss enemies, right? Let's eat the sausage. We get 15% damage bonus to boss enemies, which means that's just a grade 1's damage boost. We also have a Chef Azars right here, look. I call him out. Let's make a buff again. I have to like make something so he comes to the workbench real quick. Oh, there he is. Look at him. And all we need to do now is craft sausage 1. Cancel the other one that we're crafting. Boom, we got the sausage. Now we have a Chef Azars buff on it, 38%. Obviously, if we take 15%, add 38% of the base, we will get 20.7 damage bonus against grade 1's. So right now, look, we have 15%. I'm going to eat the sausage, and we will have now 20.7. There's a buff called hot dog, which if I craft this, we will gain 20% damage towards enemies affected by the bullseye. Let's get that. I'm gonna show you something else real quick. I'm gonna get myself a crossbow here, and I'm gonna get myself this pistol here. Our base damage is 599, right? And our crossbow will apply 16% vulnerability, so we'll deal 16% more damage. And we have weapon damage bonus of 20%. Okay, so now I'm gonna shoot this target. We do 719, right? I'm gonna apply bullseye. Boom, it's now marked. And now we deal 834 damage. Okay, cool. Now we're gonna eat the hot dog. Let's eat it. Now I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm shooting the target. We deal 719. Okay, let's mark the target again. Boom. And now we deal 1001. Why? Because we ate the hot dog. Now the hot dog, as you can see, doesn't show a damage bonus anywhere. Why? I don't know. Ask the devs. But what I figured out is it gives you the damage towards grade 1's. It just doesn't show you it. So our gun is 599. Let's put in 599 because that's base damage for the gun. Let's put in 20% weapon damage. Boom. Now we add 16% because when the crossbow marks enemies, it basically is a new multiplier and does more damage. So this is 834. Just exact damage we did as we tested before. Now we add a new multiplier and it's 20%, as you can see. 20% because the hot dog we ate had 20% buff. Now, if I shoot and mark the target once again, let's just test it one more time. You can see I deal 1001 damage to the body. And the reason why I would do that is because, well, the decimal rounds up to 1001. Now let me do this one more time. Hey, let's get it, buddy. Craft again a hot dog, but this time with Chef Azars Rex. And we're gonna get 27.6 buff from this, because this gives us the base chance of this buff is 20%. We take that 20%, add 38% to it, and this is our buff, 27.6. Okay, let's go down now. Obviously, when I eat this buff now, I will deal even more damage. So let's eat it. Mark the enemy. And shoot in the body. You can see we deal 1064 damage now instead. And the way we calculate that is we do the same. Instead of 20%, we put 27.6. And that's the number right here. This hot dog buff counts towards grade 1's damage. So if you had 6%, then instead of 27.6, it would be 33.6. But yeah, I equipped a mod that gives us damage against normal enemies 4. So I would have to include a new multiplier here. And that would be the damage to the dummy in the body now. So let's shoot. 1106. Now you can see when I shoot the dummy and I shoot in the body, we have 1097. As you can see, it doesn't match the damage here. Why? Because the damage against normal enemies is in one slot, or like in a one multiplier. So let's say you eat a hot dog 27.6 and you have 4% normal enemies. You just have to add them together. Now look what happens. Exact damage, baby. So once again, let me shoot this guy. Boom. And we do 1097. So that's the exact number we got. That's it. That's how this hot dog works. And that is why the hot dog is better. Don't you dare argue with me in the comments. Anyways, sausage is good. It's too, I mean, sausage is, why would you use sausage? It's only good if you are shooting an enemy that is not marked, but like, you're using bingo and WILDFIRE, you're always marking the enemies. So that's why you want to use hot dog. It costs the same. The only thing that it costs more is corn oil, but it costs the same deviated 2 mushrooms. There's literally no point to use this. And it costs you this thing. I don't even know how you get this. Masala, whatever this is called. Hot dog for the win, ladies and gents. And for the drink buff, doesn't matter what you use. You can use iced tea. There's nothing that gives you damage boost. But yeah, that's why you don't want to use bread. But yeah, don't you dare using crumbly bread. 25% weapon damage is not going to help at all. Ladies and gents, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new today. Sorry for making this video long, but I just wanted to put it out there. Just wanted to make this final build. If you have any questions or video ideas, join my Discord and shoot them there. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and peace out.